The calculated facade. The Metropolitan Museum's grand hall glittered with crystal chandeliers and the flash of diamonds. Julian Frost adjusted his custom-tailored tuxedo as he watched from the wings of the stage. His annual Frost Foundation Gala was a masterpiece of strategic philanthropy, each table carefully arranged with potential investors, influential journalists, and celebrities whose social media posts would amplify his message. 2 minutes, Mr. Frost, his assistant Olivia whispered, handing him a glass of water. The teleprompter is set with the finalized speech. Julian nodded, mentally preparing for his performance. At 42, he had perfected the art of the public persona, confident but humble, powerful yet approachable. His dark hair was precisely styled with just enough silver at the temples to suggest wisdom rather than age. The Forbes cover last month had called him the Benevolent Emperor of Silicon Valley, a title he neither confirmed nor denied enjoying. Tonight's donations have already hit 8 million, Olivia added. PR team says we're trending nationwide. A small smile touched Julian's lips. Perfect. His team had orchestrated everything down to the minute. Details, including which underprivileged children would stand behind him during the speech finale, their faces carefully selected to represent diversity without appearing too desperate or sad. Inspiration sold better than desperation. The MC's voice boomed through the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, the visionary founder of Quantum Horizons and chairman of the Frost Foundation, Mr. Julian Frost. Applause cascaded through the room as Julian strode onto the stage, his smile calibrated to project both confidence and gratitude. He began his speech with practiced precision, his voice resonating through the hall. 6 years ago, Quantum Horizons was just an idea sketched on a coffee shop napkin. Today, we've transformed how the world connects, communicates, and creates. But success isn't measured in market caps or valuations. It's measured in impact. From the center of the audience, Nora Diaz clutched her small handbag, her heart pounding against her ribs. She didn't belong here among the wealthy and powerful, in her simple navy dress purchased for this specific night. At 35, Nora had built a modest life teaching computer science at a community center in the Bronx, worlds away from the luxury surrounding her. Yet she remembered Julian before all this, before the empire, before the carefully crafted image. She remembered his passionate speeches to their small team of 6, working out of a converted warehouse with salvaged furniture and malfunctioning air conditioning. On stage, Julian continued, the Frost Foundation has built 17 innovation centers in underserved communities, providing technology education to over 10,000 children worldwide. Nora's throat tightened. Those were her programs, her curriculum, designed during long nights at Quantum Horizons when the company was still finding its footing, before everything changed. When we invest in children's education, we invest in tomorrow's innovators, Julian declared, as images of smiling children working on computers flashed on the massive screens behind him. Something snapped inside Nora. 6 years of silence, of watching from the sidelines as her ideas were implemented without acknowledgement, of reading about Julian's genius vision for technology education. She stood up, her voice shakier than intended but loud enough to carry. What about the people who built those programs with you, Julian? The room fell silent. Security guards tensed. Julian's smooth expression faltered for just a moment before he recovered, saying coolly into the microphone, I believe we have time for questions after the presentation, but Nora continued, her voice growing stronger. I helped design those educational programs when Quantum was starting out. Remember your promise? Everyone who builds this dream will share in its success. What happened to that promise? Julian's professionally whitened smile hardened as he signaled to security. I'm afraid we have an uninvited guest who's had too much champagne. Please continue enjoying your evening while this is addressed. 2 security guards approached Nora, but she stood her ground. The Bronx Community Innovation Center you're so proud of? That was my project. The curriculum you're implementing worldwide. That came from our late-night sessions when you said we were changing the world together. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Journalists reached for their phones. This wasn't in the carefully orchestrated program. Julian's composure finally cracked. "This is neither the time nor place for personal grievances," he snapped, his voice sharp enough to make several guests flinch. "Security, escort this woman out immediately." As the guards reached for her arms, Nora looked directly at Julian. "I didn't come for money or revenge. I came because those children you're helping deserve to know the truth about how ideas are born, not from one genius, but from many hands working together." The room was utterly silent now. Hundreds of eyes moving between the furious billionaire on stage and the composed woman being led toward the exit. Just before reaching the doors, Nora turned back. "Congratulations on your success, Julian. I just thought the man who once said integrity was everything might want to remember his own." The doors closed behind her, leaving Julian standing alone under the spotlight, his perfectly crafted speech suddenly hollow in the wake of a truth he'd worked very hard to forget. Echoes of the past. The morning after the gala, Julian paced his penthouse office overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Rain streaked down the floor-to-ceiling windows, matching his darkening mood as he watched the media storm unfold on multiple screens. Billionaire confronted. Former employee disrupts Frost Gala. Questions raised about quantum horizons. Origin story. Who is Nora Diaz? The woman who silenced Julian Frost. "We need to issue a statement immediately," said Olivia, frantically typing on her tablet. "Social media is exploding. Your mentions are up 600% since last night." Julian paused his pacing. "What do we know about her current situation?" Nora Elena Diaz, 35. After leaving Quantum, she got her teaching certificate. Now runs technology programs at the Bronx Community Center. Lives in a one-bedroom apartment in Washington Heights. No social media presence to speak of. Seems to have deliberately kept a low profile. Julian's mind drifted back 6 years. The converted warehouse with exposed brick walls and unreliable heating. Pizza boxes and empty coffee cups at 3 a.m. And Nora, always Nora, with her notebook full of ideas and unswerving belief that technology could be a great equalizer if only it reached the right hands. "Sir?" Olivia prompted. "Legal is waiting for your decision. We could issue a cease and desist, emphasize her limited role as an early-stage employee, perhaps imply emotional instability." "No." Julian's voice was quiet, but firm. "No legal action." He walked to his desk and unlocked the bottom drawer, removing a battered leather notebook. Inside, pages were filled with handwriting, some his, but much of it Nora's distinctive script. Education program outlines. Interface designs for children with different learning styles. A manifesto about technology access as a fundamental right. "Cancel my meetings today," he said, still looking at the notebook. "And find me everything about the Bronx Community Center's technology program." Across town, Nora sat at her small kitchen table, staring at her silent phone. After last night's confrontation, she'd expected consequences, perhaps legal threats or, at minimum, angry calls. Instead, nothing. Her roommate and best friend, Prisha, placed a fresh cup of coffee in front of her. "You're officially trending, you know. Twitter's calling you Gala Girl and Billionaire's Nightmare." Nora groaned. "This isn't what I wanted." "What did you want then?" Prisha asked gently. "You've barely mentioned quantum horizons in all the years I've known you. Then suddenly you're crashing galas and confronting tech moguls." Nora traced the rim of her coffee cup. "Last week I was helping Deshaun, you know, the brilliant 14-year-old from my advanced class, with his project. He was so excited about this Innovation Center program, talking about Julian Frost like he's some kind of superhero." She paused. "Then he showed me the curriculum materials and I saw my own words. Word for word from proposals I wrote years ago." Prisha leaned forward. "So this was about getting credit?" "No," Nora said firmly. "It was about truth. About all of us who believed in something before it was profitable to believe." She closed her eyes, remembering. 6 years earlier, Quantum Horizons was 7 people in a rundown space with second-hand furniture and first-rate dreams. Julian wasn't a polished billionaire then, just a brilliant, driven programmer with a vision and the rare ability to inspire others to see it too. Their late nights had been filled with passionate debates about democratizing technology. Julian and Nora often stayed the latest, refining ideas until sunrise. "We're building more than a company," he'd told her once, his eyes intense in the glow of computer screens. "We're building a future where technology serves everyone, not just those who can afford it." Nora had believed him completely, putting her graduate studies on hold to work without salary for months, surviving on ramen and conviction. When Julian secured their first major funding, he'd promised equity to the original team. "Everyone who helped build this dream will share in its success," he'd declared, opening champagne as they celebrated on the warehouse roof. 3 months later, everything changed. New investors arrived with sleek suits and strategic plans. The company needed to streamline and professionalize. One by one, the original team members were sidelined or replaced with experienced executives from established tech companies. When Nora questioned the shifting focus away from educational initiatives, she was reassigned to increasingly marginal projects. The final conversation had been brief. "The company's evolving," Julian had said, not quite meeting her eyes in his newly decorated office. "We're moving in a direction that requires different expertise." Her termination package had been generous by normal standards, but contained no equity, no recognition of those early promises. She'd left quietly then, too shocked and hurt to fight. Watched from afar as quantum horizons skyrocketed, as Julian transformed into the charismatic tech visionary gracing magazine covers. Saw how the company eventually circled back to educational initiatives, using her original frameworks, but with Julian's name attached to the vision. Prisha's voice pulled her back to the present. "Your phone's buzzing." Nora glanced down to see an unfamiliar number with a text message. "Bronx Community Center just received anonymous donation of $2 million for technology program expansion. Designated specifically for your department. Board meeting emergency session to discuss." Her hands trembled as she set down the phone. Hush money. He thought he could buy her silence. "Nora?" Prisha asked, concerned. "I'm not finished," Nora whispered, more to herself than to her friend. "Not even close." Ripples of consequence. 3 days after the gala, Julian stood in the back of the Bronx Community Center's main computer lab, watching Nora teach. She hadn't noticed him yet. He'd made sure of that. Slipping in quietly while she was engrossed in helping a teenage boy debug a game he was creating. The room buzzed with focused energy as 20 students, ranging from elementary to high school age, worked on various projects. Julian was struck by how different this was from the carefully staged photo ops he typically attended. These weren't children positioned for maximum photogenic impact. They were real kids. Some frustrated, others excited, all genuinely engaged in learning. "Ms. Diaz, I can't figure out why my loop keeps breaking," called a girl with intricate braids and serious eyes. Nora moved to her station, pulled up a chair. "Let's think through this together. What's the first thing we check when a loop misbehaves?" Julian watched as she guided the student through troubleshooting without simply providing the answer. It was the same teaching approach she'd outlined in those early notebooks, the ones his foundation had eventually implemented across their global programs, albeit with significant modifications by his curriculum development team. "Excuse me? Are you lost?" The question came from a tall woman with silver-streaked dreadlocks who had appeared beside him. "I'm here to speak with Nora Diaz," Julian replied quietly. The woman's eyes widened slightly in recognition. "Mr. Frost, I'm Director Harriet Washington. We weren't expecting you personally to follow up on the donation." It wasn't meant to be public knowledge yet. Director Washington raised an eyebrow. "In communities like ours, unexpected millions rarely stay secret. The board is quite interested in the sudden generosity, particularly given recent events." Before Julian could respond, Nora's voice cut through the room. "What are you doing here?" She stood frozen between workstations, her expression a complex mixture of shock, anger, and something else he couldn't quite identify. 20 young faces turned toward him with curious expressions. Recognition dawned on several of the older students. "Yo, that's Julian Frost!" exclaimed a lanky teenager with glasses. "The Quantum Horizons guy." An excited murmur swept through the room, forcing Nora to regain her composure. "Students, please continue with your projects. Deshaun, you're in charge for the next 15 minutes. The boy who'd been debugging his game straightened with pride. "Yes, Ms. Diaz." She gestured for Julian to follow her into a small office adjacent to the lab. Director Washington followed, closing the door behind them. "If this is about having me removed from the center because of your donation, you can save your breath," Nora began, arms crossed defensively. "That's not why I'm here," Julian said. "Then why the donation? Guilty conscience? Or just damage control?" Director Washington cleared her throat. "Perhaps I should give you two a moment." "No," Nora said firmly. "Anything he has to say can be said in front of you, Harriet." Julian loosened his tie slightly, feeling uncomfortably warm under their scrutiny. "The donation has no strings attached. It's not contingent on anything, including your employment status or discretion." "How generous," Nora replied, her voice tinged with sarcasm. "Did your PR team suggest that approach?" Julian's carefully maintained patience began to fray. "Do you think you're the only one who cared about the original vision? The only one who made sacrifices? Do you have any idea what it takes to turn an idea into an actual functioning global operation?" "I know exactly what it takes," Nora shot back, conveniently forgetting the people who helped you start. "Rewriting history so there's only room for one genius founder. That's not fair." "Fair?" Nora's laugh was sharp. "Was it fair when you promised equity to your original team and then pushed us out once the real money arrived? Was it fair to take my educational framework, the one you said was too idealistic to be practical, and implement it years later under your name?" Director Washington observed them both with shrewd eyes. "The donation," she interjected calmly. "What exactly are your expectations regarding it, Mr. Frost?" Julian ran a hand through his carefully styled hair, disheveling it slightly. "No expectations. The money is for the center to use as it sees fit, preferably to expand the technology programs. I've seen the results firsthand now." He glanced toward the window overlooking the lab. "These kids are building impressive projects." "Thanks to Nora's curriculum," Director Washington stated pointedly. An uncomfortable silence filled the small office. Through the window, they could see the students working, occasionally glancing curiously toward the office. "I read your interview in Tech Innovator last year," Nora finally said, her voice quieter. "You talked about how you developed the educational framework during Quantum's early days, inspired by your own experiences as a self-taught programmer." "That framework was my thesis project, Julian, the one I abandoned my PhD to help build your company." Julian's expression tightened. For a man accustomed to controlling narratives, being confronted with his own revisionist history was deeply unsettling. "The company employs thousands of people now," he said, as if that justified everything. "The foundation funds programs in 27 countries." "And that's wonderful," Nora acknowledged. "Those programs are changing lives. I see it every day in this center. I just want the truth acknowledged, not just about me, but about everyone who helped build the foundation you stand on." Director Washington checked her watch. "The students will be waiting, Nora." Nora nodded and moved toward the door, then paused. "Why are you really here, Julian?" "After 6 years of nothing, why now?" Julian looked at her directly for the first time since entering the office. "Because you were right. Not about everything, but about enough." After Nora returned to her class, Director Washington lingered. "For what it's worth, Mr. Frost, she never badmouthed you to the students. Even when they've asked about her time at Quantum, she's always been professional. Why didn't she ever reach out? Legal would have compensated her for her contributions to the curriculum." The older woman gave him a measured look. "Some things aren't about money, Mr. Frost. Sometimes they're about being seen, being remembered." She opened the door. "Our board meets on Thursday to discuss the donation. I assume we'll see you or your representatives there." Julian watched through the window as Nora moved among the students, her face animated as she explained a concept. "I'll be there myself," he said quietly. Bridges over troubled waters. The Jefferson Bridge Park overlooked the East River, offering a view of Manhattan's glittering skyline across the water. It was here, on a bench facing the city, that Nora found Julian waiting 1 week after his visit to the community center. His text had been unexpected. "Need to talk." Somewhere neutral. Not about the donation. She almost hadn't come. The board had unanimously accepted Quantum's funding, despite her objections about potential strings attached. "We can't afford to turn down $2 million because of your personal history," Director Washington had said kindly but firmly. Now, approaching the bench, Nora noticed how different Julian looked in casual clothes, jeans and a simple gray sweater, his normally perfect hair slightly ruffled by the October breeze. More like the man she'd known years ago. "You came," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. "I almost didn't." She sat at the opposite end of the bench, maintaining distance. "What's this about?" Julian handed her a coffee, dark roast with 1 sugar, the way she'd always taken it. The fact that he remembered such a small detail after all these years unsettled her. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began. "About quantum's early days, about the stories we tell ourselves to justify our decisions." "And?" Nora prompted, when he didn't continue immediately. Julian gazed out at the water. "I told myself that business required difficult choices, that the investors demanded changes, that securing the company's future meant reorganizing." "You mean firing the people who helped you start it?" He didn't deny it. "The night after the gala, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about what you said. So I dug up all the old files, including the original incorporation papers. Found something interesting." From his jacket, he withdrew a document and handed it to her. Nora's breath caught as she recognized the crude logo they'd designed during a late-night brainstorming session. Below it, signatures of the original team members, including her own. And there, in the equity distribution section, clear evidence of the promises made. Promises later broken during the reorganization. "This was legally binding," she said, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "Yes. You violated your own company's founding agreement. The lawyers found workarounds during the first funding round. Standard practice, they called it." Julian's voice was flat. "I convinced myself it was necessary for growth. A cargo ship pushed slowly up the river, fighting against the current." Nora watched it, gathering her thoughts. "Why show me this now? Are you worried I'll sue?" Julian laughed without humor. "You'd win if you did. My legal team has been having collective apoplexy since I found these documents." "That doesn't answer my question." He turned to face her fully. "I'm showing you because you deserve to know I didn't forget. I chose to ignore it. There's a difference." The bluntness of his admission stunned her into silence. "After you left," he continued, "everything accelerated. Series A funding, then B, then the IPO. Suddenly, I was running a company valued at billions, with thousands of employees and shareholders expecting constant growth. The narrative simplified. Visionary founder disrupts industry. It was easier than the messy truth. That others contributed significantly to your vision? Yes." He met her gaze steadily. "I've spent years telling a story so often I started to believe it myself." Nora sipped her coffee, buying time. Part of her, a significant part, wanted to throw the document in his face and walk away. But another part recognized the rarity of what was happening. A powerful man acknowledging his deliberate erasure of others' contributions. "What do you want from me, Julian?" "Nothing." He hesitated, then corrected himself. "No, that's not true. I want to make things right, but I don't expect forgiveness." "Good, because I'm not offering it." "Not yet, anyway." They sat in silence, watching the city lights strengthen as dusk deepened around them. "Your students," Julian said eventually, "they're incredible. Especially that boy, Deshaun. His game design showed remarkable intuition for user experience. Despite herself, Nora felt a surge of pride. He taught himself Python at 12, came to the center because his family couldn't afford a decent computer. Now he's building neural networks for fun. Like someone else I used to know." Julian's voice held a warmth she hadn't heard in years. "I wasn't that good at 12. Nora demurred. "You were better at 26, he countered. "Your educational platform design was years ahead of its time. The current version we use globally still uses your core architecture." The acknowledgement, so long withheld, washed over her like an unexpected wave. "I have a proposal," Julian said after another period of silence. "Not a buyout or a settlement. Something different," Nora tensed. "I'm listening." "I want to establish a special division within the foundation, focused on developing next-generation educational technology." Independent budget, creative control, direct implementation in communities like the Bronx first, before wider rollout. He paused. I want you to run it. She stared at him, caught between suspicion and intrigue. Why? Because you were right about the educational approach from the beginning. Because the students at your center are proof of your methods. Because, he faltered slightly, because it's time to correct course. And who gets the credit for this initiative? The entire original team. Publicly acknowledged, properly compensated retroactively for their equity stakes. He handed her another folder, including you. Inside was a contract outlining exactly what he'd described, along with a compensation package that made her eyes widen. This is either the most expensive apology in history or a very elaborate PR stunt, she said. Closing the folder. Find out which, he challenged. Come to Quantum tomorrow. Tour the foundation offices. Meet the team. Then decide. Nora stood, contract in hand. I make no promises. I've made enough empty promises for both of us, Julian replied. I'm trying something new, following through. As she turned to leave, he called after her. For what it's worth, Nora. Not a day has gone by that I haven't thought about how things ended between us. Professionally and otherwise. She paused but didn't turn around. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., I'll be there. But Julian, I'm bringing my own lawyer. For the first time that evening, he smiled genuinely. I'd expect nothing less. Foundations of tomorrow spring. Sunshine streamed through the windows of the Quantum Horizons Foundation's newest innovation. Center in the South Bronx. The converted warehouse space, deliberately chosen for its resemblance to Quantum's original headquarters, hummed with activity as students worked alongside tech industry mentors. On the exposed brick wall, a large plaque listed the names of Quantum's original founding team, with a quote beneath, "Great innovation never comes from one mind alone." 6 months had passed since the gala confrontation that had forced Julian Frost to confront long-buried truths. 6 months of legal negotiations, public statements, and private reckonings. In her glass-walled office overlooking the main workspace, Nora reviewed the quarterly results with satisfaction. The Foundation's initiative, her brainchild now being implemented in 15 cities, was showing remarkable outcomes. Student retention rates were unprecedented. Project completion metrics exceeded all projections. A knock at her door preceded Julian's entrance. Unlike their early encounters after the gala, the tension between them had gradually transformed into something different, a cautious respect that occasionally hinted at their former closeness. The board unanimously approved the international expansion, he announced, settling into the chair across from her desk. London, Lagos, and Lima will launch simultaneously next quarter. Nora smiled, closing her laptop. Deshawn's adaptive learning algorithm made quite an impression, didn't it? The board chair called it revolutionary. She wants to meet the developer. Julian's eyes crinkled with amusement. I didn't have the heart to tell her he's 15 and more interested in his upcoming driving test than corporate meetings. He'll make time, especially if there's funding involved for his neural network project. The easy conversation between them still felt like a small miracle. The first months of their professional reunion had been fraught with distrust and carefully maintained boundaries. Nora had approached every interaction expecting ulterior motives. Julian had responded with uncharacteristic patience, gradually earning back small measures of trust through consistent actions rather than promises. The public narrative around Quantum Horizons had shifted too. Julian's unprecedented acknowledgement of the original team, complete with substantial retroactive equity compensation, had generated initial skepticism from the tech press, then reluctant admiration as the Foundation's new direction yielded impressive results. The documentary crew wants additional footage of the mentorship sessions, Julian said, checking his phone. They're particularly interested in the collaboration model you developed. The documentary, Foundations Reimagining Tech Education, had been Julian's idea. Not a corporate promotional piece, but an honest exploration of both Quantum's revised history and the educational philosophy now driving their foundation work. Speaking of collaboration, Nora said, have you thought more about Prisha's proposal? Having medical residents participate in the developer sessions could open entirely new application pathways. Julian nodded. Already approved. Her healthcare innovation module starts next month. He hesitated, then added, I was thinking we could celebrate the 6-month milestone. Dinner, perhaps? Nora gave him a measured look. They had carefully maintained professional boundaries despite the gradually warming relationship. Dinner with the team? Actually, Julian said, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I was thinking just us. The proposition hung between them, not quite personal, not entirely professional. Nora considered him thoughtfully. The Julian Frost sitting before her was markedly different from both versions she had known before. Neither the passionate, sometimes naive startup founder, nor the polished, calculated billionaire. This Julian carried elements of both, tempered by something new, humility born from public accountability. There's a Venezuelan place in my neighborhood, she said finally. Nothing fancy, but the food is incredible. Something like relief flickered across his features. I'd like that. Later that evening, they sat at a small table in the back of Alma's kitchen, surrounded by colorful murals and the warm chatter of regular patrons. No one recognized the tech mogul in his casual clothes, sitting across from a woman who challenged him between bites of arepas. You still haven't explained why you kept my original curriculum notebooks, Nora said, continuing a conversation that had begun during their walk from the subway. Julian sipped his beer before answering. At first, they were reference materials. Then, reminders, I suppose? Of what? Of when the work was about the work, not about stock prices or market position. He traced a pattern on the condensation of his glass. Of when I last felt like myself. The simple honesty in his voice caught her off guard. This was the Julian she'd known in the warehouse days, the one who could speak truth without calculating its impact first. The night of the gala, she said, I didn't come planning to confront you publicly. I just wanted to see for myself what you'd become. And I saw someone who had everything but had forgotten the most important thing, which was... Nora looked at him directly. That innovation isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about creating spaces where everyone gets to be smart together. He nodded slowly. The original mission. Before I let myself be convinced that success required a single visionary leader rather than a community of minds. Exactly. She paused, considering whether to voice the question that had lingered for months. Why did you really create the Foundation's initiative? The truth, Julian. He set down his fork, giving her question the consideration it deserved. Partially to right a wrong. Partially because it made business sense. Your educational approach works better than anything our highly paid consultants developed. He hesitated, then added quietly, and partially because working with you again was the only way I could think of to show you who I really am, who I want to be. The admission hung between them, more intimate than any words they'd exchanged since reconnecting. And who is that? She asked softly. Someone worthy of being remembered as part of a team, not just as a solo success story. His eyes met hers. Someone worthy of a second chance? Nora felt the walls she'd maintained carefully beginning to lower. Second chances have to be earned. I know. He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but leaving the possibility open. I'm prepared to keep earning it. However long it takes. She studied him, the familiar determination in his eyes now softened with genuine vulnerability. Slowly, deliberately, she moved her hand forward until their fingers touched. The Julian Frost I knew 6 years ago made promises easily and broke them just as easily, she said. The man sitting here now has spent 6 months keeping every promise, however small. People can change, he offered, when they're shown the truth clearly enough to finally see it themselves. Outside the restaurant window, the lights of the city sparkled against the darkening sky. Inside, 2 people who had once built dreams together cautiously began laying the foundation for something new. Something built not on the shifting sands of ambition and image, but on the solid ground of honesty, mutual respect, and the courage to acknowledge both past failures and future possibilities. To foundations, Nora said, raising her glass. Julian's smile reached his eyes as he touched his glass to hers, and to the truth that builds them.